All right, good afternoon. We have a special guest today, Reem Abaza, the spokesperson for the President of the General Assembly, will brief you once I'm done. And please remember for both Reem and myself to mute your microphones and make sure that you're sending both the audio and the video if you want to speak. Otherwise, the system will not be able to function. As you will have seen this morning, the Secretary General spoke at the World Health Organization's launch to accelerate the development, production, and equitable access to new COVID-19 tools. Also taking part in the event were Dr. Tedros, President Macron of France, the President of South Africa, the Chancellor of Germany, and the head of the EU Commission, and many other world leaders, as well as health partners. In his remarks, the Secretary General stressed that human health is the quintessential global public good. Today, he said, we face a global pandemic like no other. In an interconnected world, none of us is safe until all of us are safe. The Secretary General stressed that the world needs the development, production, and equitable delivery of safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostic tools. But he said this must be a vaccine and treatment that are affordable, safe, effective, easily administered, and universally available for everyone, everywhere. The Secretary General expressed confidence that this can be done, saying he knows we can put people first. Mr. Guterres called for this to be done, to be one of the vital lessons of this pandemic, the need for new urgency in support the global public goods and universal healthcare coverage. Our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that aid groups, large and small, are supporting the world's most vulnerable people in the fight against COVID-19. Humanitarian organizations, including UN agencies, the International Red Cross, and others, are carrying out efforts ranging from working to building global supply chains and air bridges, to deliver masks and medical equipment, to communicating life-saving messages from cars and bicycles. Lockdowns, curfews, and restrictions on movements of personnel and cargo are impacting the humanitarian response, but aid workers are determined to continue their life-saving work, to continue to help some 117 million people around the world. To support the humanitarian response by all, the UN is urging access by fast tracking of health and aid workers and also supplies at borders and within country. The humanitarian system urgently needs funding to continue to fight the virus while maintaining critical pre-existing programs. The $2 billion COVID-19 Global Humanitarian Response Plan, which, as you recall, the Secretary General launched a month ago, has received so far $697 million. You can read more about what aid organizations are doing to respond to the crisis on OCHA's website. From Geneva, Michelle Bachelet, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, says she is alarmed by restrictive measures imposed by several states against independent media, as well as the arrest and intimidation of journalists. Ms. Bachelet said some states have used the pandemic as a pretext to restrict information and stifle criticism. The Human Rights Office has received reports of journalists disappearing after critical coverage of the COVID-19 response. News outlets have also been closed by authorities over the reporting. The free flow of information is vital to fighting the pandemic, she said, adding that we have never depended on a free media more than during this pandemic. Credible, accurate reporting is a lifeline for all of us. And in a worrying development, the World Health Organization said yesterday that since the start of the pandemic, they have seen a dramatic increase in the number of cyber attacks directed at its staff. The number of cyber attacks is now more than 5 times the number directed at the organization in the same period of last year. This week, some 450 active WHO email addresses and passwords were leaked online, along with thousands belonging to others working on the virus response. The leaked credentials did not put WHO systems at risk because the data was not recent. However, the attack did impact an older extranet system used by current and retired staff, as well as some of its WHO's partners. The organization is now migrating affected systems to a more secure authentication system. And scammers impersonating World Health Organization in emails have also increasingly targeted the general public in order to channel donations to a fictitious fund and not the authentic COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund. And in New York this morning, the special representative and head of the UN Interim Administration Mission in Kosovo, Zahir Tanin, warned the Security Council about the country's particular vulnerability to the threat of a wider outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. Mr. Tanin said that strong leadership and political unity are needed in Kosovo now more than ever, as the battle is waged against enormous challenge posed by the virus. He added that even as heroic efforts are being made by medical personnel, the country's healthcare resources are stretched thin. He also expressed concern over internal political instability, including the March 25th parliamentary vote of no confidence. And later today, the Undersecretaries General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, as well as for peace operations, Rosemary DiCarlo and Jean-Pierre Lacroix, are also expected to brief members of the Security Council on Sudan. And the UN Refugee Agency says it's supporting efforts in Latin America to tap into the skills of refugees and migrant healthcare workers to support their national responses to COVID-19. Countries like Peru, Argentina, Chile, and Mexico have put in place special measures to authorize the hiring of foreign qualified professionals and technicians. These include those awaiting licensing or whose certification is yet to be validated by host countries. Others have adopted expedited recognition processes to fast-track their inclusion in national health response. UNHCR says that thousands are now working with national health systems responding to the pandemic. Many more stand ready to support and give back to the communities that are sheltering them. And I just want to highlight a few country-level cases. The UN in Lebanon is urging collective action to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on children and youth. It's providing support to the Ministry of Education and Higher Education, as well as the Ministry of Agriculture, among other partners in Lebanon, by developing alternative solutions to school closures to ensure that learning never stops. UN agencies in Lebanon are assisting and preparing, as well as deploying inclusive distance learning solutions. Distance learning support includes activities for the production of pre-primary and basic educational lessons, as well as well-being materials, the gender-based violence approach, and health awareness for students and parents. The UN team in Lebanon is also providing assistance for developing communications learning materials and special TV episodes targeting teachers and parents to raise their awareness on addressing the stress and psychosocial needs of children during remote learning exercises. And in Haiti, the pandemic is moving to push more and more Haitians into severe hunger. Close to 4 million people, or nearly 1 in 3 people on the island, is already facing acute food insecurity and need urgent assistance. 1 million of them are in a situation of severe hunger. That's according to a study conducted late last year by the government with support from the World Food Programme and the FAO. In the first 4 months of this year, WFP has reached 200,000 people and has also restarted emergency food and cash distributions in many of the country's departments. As the virus led to school closures, WFP is now starting to provide take-home food rations to school children and their families. In normal times, WFP's school meals program in Haiti provides daily hot meals to approximately 300,000 children. And at this time, the agency says it is vital to scale up food assistance and is appealing for additional funding to do so. From Myanmar, where there are now 127 confirmed cases, the UN team on the ground is supporting the government's efforts to protect all groups of people from the virus, including people held in detention facilities, as well as people working in those facilities. The UN Office of Drugs and Crime is working with authorities on preparedness plan for prison to support the UN's work in prisons. We, in a program backed by the governments of Sweden and Switzerland and the UK, as well as the United States, the UN is purchasing infection control supplies, including masks, gloves, soap, hand sanitizer, thermometers, and personal protective equipment. With the support of UNAIDS, the governments and NGOs, the UN is also boosting access to information and vital healthcare services for those with drug use disorders and for people living with HIV and tuberculosis. The resident coordinator, Ola Almgren, has welcomed the government's pardon and release of close to 25,000 people on April 17th, in addition to continued efforts to strengthen the sanitary procedures in prisons and detention facilities. Mr. Almgren reiterates the UN's support for the government's response to COVID-19 across all areas and to leave no one behind in our own COVID-19 efforts in areas including preparedness, recovery, development, and peace building. In Côte d'Ivoire, where there are 952 confirmed cases, the resident coordinator there, Philippe Poinceau, is leading the UN's team's effort to the government, support to the government in its response to the virus. As with many African countries, the economic impacts hit first before the health crisis developed, with many sectors currently in distress and livelihoods deeply impacted by partial lockdown. The UN team is supporting with policy advice ranging from level of lockdown required to advising authorities and cash transfer payments and the overall governance mechanisms for the national response. The World Health Organization is directly supporting the government's emergency health plan in Côte d'Ivoire. And as part of a joint humanitarian effort, the team has put together a $355 million joint response plan covering water, sanitation, nutrition, education, protection, and communication. The UN is also working on aid coordination and resource mobilization with the World Bank and other partners. The situation in Afghanistan is quickly transforming into a food and livelihood crisis, according to our humanitarian colleagues there. Food prices in urban markets have increased significantly since mid-March against the backdrop of an ongoing response to conflict, natural disaster food-driven insecurity. We, along with our humanitarian partners, are providing double food aid rations and phased distribution are being implemented to limit the potential spread of the virus. While the ongoing international flight suspensions into the country, the UN Humanitarian Air Service started air bridge services connecting flight from Kabul to Doha yesterday. Flights are transit only and are expected 3 times a week, pending demand. More information online. And from Mozambique, the International Organization for Migration warns about the challenges still faced in the northern area of the country 1 year after being hit by Cyclone Kenneth. The Category 4 tropical storm struck communities of some 280,000 people on April 25th. IOM says that many families in the region are still working towards recovery from the cyclone. Apart from that, the province of Cabo Delgado, which borders Tanzania, is affected by displacement due to insecurity. In February of this year, cholera was also identified, impacting hundreds of people. Mozambique announced its first case of the COVID virus on March 22nd, and by the 23rd of April, it had reported 46 confirmed cases, most located in the capital Maputo and in the Cabo Delgado province. And turning to Somalia, our colleagues there tell us that we, along with our partners, yesterday launched the COVID-19 Preparedness Response Plan, which seeks just over $500 million. The plan is in support of the government's comprehensive socioeconomic impact and response plan, which was launched late last month. The new plan, which covers the next 6 to 9 months, aims to respond to the public health and immediate humanitarian socioeconomic consequences of the pandemic. As of yesterday, there were 328 confirmed cases in Somalia with 16 reported deaths. And just a note on Yemen, yesterday I was asked about the ceasefire extension in Yemen earlier today, and I can say that we welcome the Saudi extension of the unilateral ceasefire in Yemen. We hope that the Yemeni parties will take advantage of this opportunity to make progress on the ongoing UN-led negotiations and conclude as soon as possible the agreement for a nationwide ceasefire, confidence-building measures, economic and humanitarian measures, and the resumption of the political process. And finally, today is the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. In his message, the Secretary General said that COVID-19 pandemic is a tragic reminder of how deeply connected we all are, and stressed that combating the virus requires all of us to work together as one human family. But multilateralism is not only a matter of confronting shared threats, he said, it is about seizing common opportunities, adding that we now have an opportunity to build back better than in the past, aiming at inclusive and sustainable economies and society. His full message is online. And I want to flag that on Monday, the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, will be here to brief you on Arise for All, a new initiative that brings together women leaders to mobilize support for the UN Recovery Trust Fund and the UN Roadmap for Social and Economic Recovery, as laid out in the UN framework for the immediate socioeconomic response to COVID-19. The Deputy Secretary General will be joined by UNDP Administrator Achim Steiner, and we hope to be trying out our new virtual press briefing room on that day. And I will take some questions from you, and then we will turn to Reem for a session and update from the President of the General Assembly. Let me go to my trusty moderator, Edie. Edie?
Thank you very much, Steph. I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah.
And happy almost weekend to everybody. I wondered whether the Secretary General has any comment to follow up on the increasing attacks on journalists as a result of the pandemic. It's not only the Human Rights Commissioner, but also Reporters Without Borders that put out a big report on this same issue. And as a follow-up to Yemen, can you tell us what Martin Griffiths is doing in response to the extension of the ceasefire? And as a third comment, I am sure I speak on behalf of all of us that we would like to have a press conference with the Secretary General to hear his assessment of where his global ceasefire call and all his other appeals are going, and a lot of other questions.
Excellent. On your last bit, I have relayed that call. We are working on setting up something later next week, but I hear you, and I always want him to brief because it gives me a day off. So we're pushing in that direction. On Yemen, what Martin Griffiths is doing is seizing the opportunity and redoubling his contacts with all the parties to try to seize this moment and get the parties to agree to and implement his proposals. On your first question, it is a trend that is worrying on your first question on the issue of journalists being attacked and harassed, it is a trend that is very much worrying the Secretary General. He fully agrees with the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And also it is something that is highlighted and underscored in his policy brief on human rights, which was just released. I will now go to Iftikhar, who emailed a question. Financing for Development Forum yesterday adopted an outcome document recommending steps to alleviate the serious economic situation in COVID developing country. What are the next steps? Do the General Assembly, do these go for General Assembly for endorsement? As for the administrative next steps, I do not know, Iftikhar. We can try to find out, or I would encourage you to reach out to our colleague Paul Simon, who works for the ECOSOC presidency and handles press questions. We think it was very important for this body to speak with one voice and adopt this document. Let's go to a live question, then I'll go to another email one. Toby.
Hi, Steph. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Hi, nice to see you. Question regarding the letter sent from Senate Foreign Relations Committee senators requesting a review of the WHO response to COVID, looking for a response there from the Secretary General. That's the first question. Second question regards domestic violence and the threat of domestic violence that we've been hearing about from numerous bodies and agencies, which is, who specifically is being targeted now as a result of the isolation measures during COVID-19, and what are the policy responses that we should be seeing in response to this growing problem? And the third is a similar question related to another appeal that we've heard recently, which is increased internet usage and time spent online, which you mentioned today. What sort of regulations do we need to see put in place, or policy recommendations that can address these newfound dangers? So first one is senator letter, second one is domestic violence, who specifically is being targeted, and third one is on children online, recommendations for that. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me try to take these in some order. On the letter, yes, we've seen the report, and the letter has been received. An answer will be drafted. As for the Secretary General's position on the issue writ large, I would refer you back to his statement that he made on October 8th, and those words and that position remains. On the issue of domestic violence, it is something that the Secretary General flagged very early on, and more than 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. The risk that not just the risk, but the fact that we've seen that the lockdown is often putting women and girls and children at increased risk, when especially women and girls can be trapped with their abusers. We have been, I think, very heartened to see a very positive response from a number of member states who have also flagged this issue. In terms of policy recommendation, what is important is that as countries put in place COVID response plans, that those include support for women and girls, support for abuse hotlines, support for shelters, that concrete measures be taken for what is a very, very real problems. If you look at some of the reporting that's been done around the world in the last 3 weeks, you've seen a lot of countries report very high spikes in the calls they've received to hotlines. And of course, that's in countries where such hotlines exist, where such framework already exists. We know that in many developing countries, there is no place for women and girls to call. So it's very important in that in their response plans at the country level, policymakers put this in place. Your third question, my memory runs. On internet, I think I would encourage you to look at the policy briefs we've put out on children. I know UNICEF has also spoken about the risk of children and adolescents spending too much time online, with the increased risk of radicalization that poses. And again, these are issues that policymakers need to put in place as they roll out response plans. There had been an email from Maggie, which I think covers what I've just answered on the letter. So I will go to Mr. Bays of Al Jazeera.
Hello, Steph. I'll have two questions for you. Let's do them one by one. Today is the day of multilateralism. You had a major event which the Secretary General took part in. In times past, if you'd had a global crisis and world leaders coming together, you'd have expected the US to play a leading role. Is the Secretary General disappointed there was no US involvement today?
The Secretary General knows that the U.S. continues to play a very important role in international affairs, and we continue to see the United States as a critical partner of the United Nations. Your second question.
Okay, I'm here with my second question, which I think follows on a little bit from Toby's question. Does the Secretary General, I know we've asked this before, but does the Secretary General feel there should be some sort of lessons learned inquiry? Because I know you're still doing the firefighting, but this is a rolling crisis, and it may go on for months, maybe years, in some form.
I mean,
clearly there are lessons that must be learned. Should such an inquiry be set up, and what's the appropriate venue for it?
Listen, the Secretary General was very clear in the statement he made on April 8th that there will be a time to look back how all these different entities, whether it's international or national, reacted during this crisis. There will need to be a lessons learned. He does not feel that now is the time to do that exactly, and he said it in April 8th. There will be a time. We are in a time of extreme crisis as it relates to the virus. We will keep looking at this and keep looking at this issue. We continue to believe that the World Health Organization, which is leading the UN's effort on the medical field, should continue to be supported. Your third question, and I have to say the light on above your shoulder kind of makes it look like you have an interrogation light right in my face, but.
I happen to be in the studio, and you'll be pleased, as it's the weekend, I have no third question.
Oh, excellent! Thank you for that. Okay, Maria.
Hi, Steph. Maria? I have questions. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you and see you.
Great. I'm sorry if you already commented. My internet is terrible today, so I lost you a couple of times. Anyway, the first question about escalation between US and Iran. Do you have a comment on that? And the second one, do you have an update on the cases of COVID among United Nations system, especially in different peacekeeping missions, because I saw a disturbing comment from Mali, and probably you can give us a little bit more details about the situation in different countries. Thank you.
Okay. So on Iran, what I can bear with me 2 seconds. Bear with me 2 seconds. On Iran, our line is for all parties involved to avoid any sort of escalation, whether in action or in rhetoric. Your other question, yes, on the number of cases, COVID cases, in terms of the UN system. There are, I'm sorry, hold on, I need to pull up the right document here. As of yesterday evening, there were 284 cases among the UN worldwide. We understand that there's been a number of cases. This includes, we understand there have been a number of cases in Mali, in the mission, but the total for I'm sorry, I'm getting information sent out to me. The total for cases within the UN Secretariat, including field missions, peacekeeping, and political missions, is 43. So the 244 number is UN system worldwide. In terms of Secretariat, peacekeeping, and field missions, it's 43. The mission in Mali itself has 32 confirmed cases, 28 uniformed personnel, and 3 civilian staff members, and 1 dependent of a local staff. I can assure you that the peacekeeping mission in Mali and all our peacekeeping missions are taking the utmost precautions in terms of trying to prevent the spread of the virus, notably both within the mission and within the civilian population, by supporting the government's efforts, both with guidance and with practical help. Did you have another question, or did I answer everything? Okay. Morin Picard.
Hi, Stephane. Thank you. The major event this morning with the WHO was ripe with technical difficulties. Can you help us understand why this is so hard to set up such a connection with all the world leaders, first? And second, due to President Macron and Chancellor Merkel speaking in their own language, why we cannot have any translation on the UN website? Thanks.
Okay, the WHO event was organized and hosted by WHO. So for any questions, technical questions, I would go to them. In their defense, we are in a brand new world, and connecting world leaders, whether they're sitting in Paris, in Berlin, in Pretoria, in New York, in Geneva, is a challenge for all of us, and I think everyone is trying to do the best they possibly can, and teaching everyone from journalists to world leaders to mute their mics, I think, is always a challenge as well. Abdelhamid, did you have a question?
Sorry, I was asking about the translation on the UN website.
The translation,
if you can
again,
answer on that.
The WHO hosted the event. You'd have to ask them about the interpreters. I know there were interpreters in the room. It may be possible, maybe you should check with them. Possibly the interpretation was laid down as a separate track after the event. But there we go. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stephane. First, I want to remind you that today is the first day of Ramadan, and I think the SG issued a statement. So it would
yes, and we flagged that statement very proactively yesterday.
Yeah. Thank you. But my question: in Saudi Arabia, the authorities tried to move by force a tribe called the Huwaitat from their land to build a tourist project called the New, taken by a French company, I think. They killed an unarmed man called Abdurrahim Hwaiti, and they arrested 8 of his family or his tribe. Are you aware of these developments? Is the SG aware of that?
If you want to email us this, it's the first I've heard of it, but I'm happy to look into it.
I did send it to Florencia, so I will email it to you.
Perfect. And Fahan as well. Okay. Pam Falk, CBS.
Hi, Steph. Hi, everybody. The World Food Program chief, David Beasley, last week, earlier this week, to the UN Security Council called for lifting of any humanitarian restrictions in terms of access, and also called for the supply chain to be kept open, like ports, and with regard to South Sudan and Yemen and other places. Has there been any reaction to that call? He said there would be famines of biblical proportions that are coming. Thanks.
Well, this is an issue that we continue to highlight every day, whether it's in Afghanistan or in Haiti. We hope the response will be felt by increasing contributions to WFP's appeal, to our global humanitarian appeal. As for exactly what has been received, I think you should check with WFP, because they will be handling those things.
Yeah,
all right.
I was just wondering, do you have, has there been any further appeal? This was on Tuesday, and he's talking about famines in third.
As I said, we've been echoing those appeals at the country level. And just to add something to Morin, I'm told that if you watched it on the WHO's website, there was different tracks of interpretation available.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's it. I will now throw it to Reem and see if this works. There we go. Okay. Thank you all, and I shall leave you. Bye.
Have a nice.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you. I hope everyone can hear me. All good? Okay. So, of course, over the last period, I was in contact virtually with many of you answering questions about different issues. So I would like to start with today's virtual event organized by the International Peace Institute in partnership with the Office of the President of the General Assembly and the Asia Society Policy Institute on the importance of multilateralism in the time of a global pandemic responding to COVID-19. The President of the General Assembly, Tijani Muhammad Bandi, said, in the face of mounting challenges, we are reminded of the indispensability of the United Nations and of multilateral institutions more broadly. The UN has provided from the onset a forum to address this global challenge in a coordinated way. We must therefore continue to support the World Health Organization to overcome this challenge and to prevent future pandemics. You will find the full remarks on the PGA's website. Yesterday, the PGA spoke at the informal virtual meeting of the 2020 ECOSOC Forum on the Financing for Development. He said that mobilizing sufficient resources will be essential in order to effectively combat COVID-19. He added that while no country will be spared from the economic impact of this crisis, developing countries will be hit the hardest, even if they do not experience an outbreak of COVID-19. The PGA said in order to minimize the real risks of rising debt levels, we need political will and steadfast international cooperation. He called on all member states to help ensure crucial liquidity in many developing countries suffering from a heavy debt burden. And just in case, if you haven't seen my email earlier this week, the PGA announced the appointment of the permanent representatives of Afghanistan and Croatia to the UN as co-coordinators for the General Assembly on COVID-19 related initiatives. The co-coordinators will engage with member states in order to facilitate the exchange of views, coordinate approaches and initiatives, as well as leverage the influence of the General Assembly to effectively advocate for measures aimed at defeating COVID-19 while mitigating its social and economic impact. In a letter sent to member states, the President of the General Assembly said that from his engagement with member states and consultations with General Committee, it is evident that everyone agrees on the need for a more coordinated approach in the response to the ongoing global crisis. And I would like to say something on voting. With the limitation on holding large in-person meetings as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, several member states have requested that we explore ways of taking decisions of the General Assembly by a vote. The UN Secretariat prepared documents to guide discussions regarding voting without a plenary meeting during the COVID-19 pandemic and on the e-recorded vote system. The PGA has sent also a letter to member states informing them that he has appointed the permanent representative of Jamaica to facilitate the discussions on this matter. Member states can cast their votes when this is implemented by an appropriate electronic means. DGACM has adopted a system in the e-delegate portal that would allow for a recorded vote without a plenary meeting. So this is everything, and thank you so much, Florencia, for sending me the questions. I have Pam. Question from Pam.
Very much. Hi, it's Pam Falk. Thank you, and thank you for the briefing. My question is about UNGA. Everyone wants to know if there are plans. People are saying it's still too early, but I just had a few diplomats and agency heads say they think it's going to have to be at least partially virtual. Any comment, any thoughts? Where's it heading? Thanks.
Thank you so much for the question. Actually, until now, we took decisions up until at the end of May. So we're taking a phased approach to deciding on meetings and events based on consultations with member states, of course. So we have a cutoff until the end of this month to decide on what's happening in June. And our decisions, either if we took the decision or sought a decision from member states, we take it based upon the guidelines from the UN Medical Director. And of course, this is guided by WHO and the local health authorities. So until now, we don't have anything on this because it's still in the future. We don't want to take decisions that far ahead, but because this is a very important, these are very important meetings for the General Assembly. So discussions have started already with the medical director and with the local authorities on the possibilities of this, on how it will be looking, but no intention to take a decision right now on this, but we will keep you updated, of course.
I understand. Just to follow up, there are those who think that if you plan in advance, you might be able to do more virtual meetings. And obviously people reserve hotel rooms and they make agendas and they do all sorts of things way in advance for this one. Oktoberfest in Germany was just canceled. So is there any thought of planning? And when you say local officials, you mean New York City?
Yes, absolutely. We are coordinating very closely with the Secretariat on virtual events and on organizing virtual meetings, just in case if anything happened. But we are taking decisions like 2 months in advance. We had a recent discussion with the UN Medical Director who told us that 2 months ago, we would never have imagined that we will be in this situation right now. So who knows after 2 months or after in September, what will happen. But that doesn't mean that active coordination and preparations are not happening. Like I just mentioned, that we are discussing how to allow the General Assembly to vote. Right now, as you know, we have the silence procedure only to take decisions in the General Assembly. But now we are preparing to see how can we include voting as well. So all preparations are going at the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm looking at Florencia sent me Toby.
Oh, hi, Reem. Yeah, I had the same question as Pam, so I'm all good. Thank you, and nice to hear you.
Thank you so much. And James?
Hello, Reem. I'd like to ask the question, similar one to the one I asked Steph. So Steph said that the SG believes that there is space for or a need one day for a lessons learned inquiry. This isn't quite the time yet. I would like to ask you about the PGA's view on that. Clearly, we have a rolling crisis that may go on for some considerable time, and clearly there needs to be at some point an investigation into how the WHO and the wider UN system dealt with this. Is the PGA giving this some thought on what sort of investigation should take place? What should be the scope of that investigation? I know there is the World Health Assembly, but it has a very narrow remit of the WHO's work, and clearly this pandemic is affecting all life and the whole international community and the whole UN system. Does the PGA believe the General Assembly is the place for any such inquiry?
Well, the PGA, first of all, on WHO. So the PGA recently, just this morning, a few hours ago, he made a statement on multilateralism, and he commended WHO's role. And he called on everyone to continue supporting WHO, which is playing an essential role in addressing the current pandemic and also to prevent the recurrence, to prevent any future pandemics. The PGA also is not shy at all in saying that there is always room for criticism in general. Today also in his exchange in the virtual event, he said, we have room for criticism. We can seek any way to look back and see what had happened, what should have happened. But in the meantime, we have to focus on one thing, which is our new challenge, our common challenge, which is COVID-19. So this is the time to stick together, to work in solidarity and cooperation and support WHO, and then we can seek any mechanism to benefit from lessons learned from this extraordinary situation.
A follow-up, a GA-led mechanism?
If member states want that, of course, that would be the way to go. Okay, so I'm looking here. And Edie?
Thank you very much, and nice to see you, Reem. I have two questions related, sort of related. First, is there a timetable for a decision on whether the GA will go back to some kind of voting procedure electronically or obviously virtually? And secondly, what resolutions are still before the GA awaiting approval, and are there any related to COVID-19?
Mm-hmm. So until now, under silence procedure that was introduced on March 27th to allow the General Assembly to take decisions without voting because of the current situation, and we cannot hold the plenary meetings, we have seen the adoption of 16 resolutions or decisions. Two silence were broken on. Right now, we don't have any resolutions under silence procedure. I would like to direct you to a very good resource on our website, un.org/PGA/74. Under documents, the tab documents, you can find letters. This, you can find all the letters addressed to member states, which includes draft resolutions and appointment of co-coordinators and so on. And also, we have a separate tab on our website called COVID-19, which you can find all the resources as well. I mentioned about voting. Right now, we are discussing the voting mechanism. The Secretariat has prepared documents about the e-recorded vote system, about how to conduct voting without having a plenary. And this is, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, they are developing a system in the e-delegate portal that will allow delegations to record, of course, the authorized delegate to record their vote without a plenary, and they can also cast their vote in a form provided in the e-delegate, or remove or modify their vote during the voting process if needed. The PGA, because this is still under consultation, so he appointed a facilitator for this, who is the permanent representative of Jamaica. This is still under discussion, under consultation with member states, and as soon as everyone agrees on this, we will announce it. But we have something going on, and you can find all the details and the scenarios of the scenarios that could require voting on our website under letters.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I don't see any. Abdel Hamid, please.
Thank you, Reem. It's nice to see you, and happy Ramadan for you and
happy
your
Ramadan.
family.
Thank you. Any question? Yes, I can hear you.
Ukraine withdrew from that committee on Palestinian inalienable rights.
Can you start again? I can't hear you, Abdel Hamid.
Okay, sorry. Withdrew from that committee on Palestinian inalienable rights, which is a committee formed by the General Assembly. And I asked the president of the committee, the ambassador of Senegal, and he said he would be consulting with the PGA to see or to form an idea about who will replace Ukraine. Do you have any update on that? Are you aware of this?
I don't have any information on this, but I will seek information and I will get back to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Arul?
Could you please tell me if you have any plans or any plans are being made for holding the Security Council elections, which are due in June? Thank you.
Thank you. So until now, we made decisions about meetings up until the end of May. We didn't take any decisions for June, which will be made very soon. At the end of this month, we will decide or seek the membership, the member states' opinion on decisions regarding the June events. So until now, nothing has been made regarding the elections that should have been held in June. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, Iftikhar, she sent an email. Any idea when the IGN process for UN Security Council reform will resume, even on virtual system? I can get information from my colleagues on this who are working on the IGN process and get back to you over email. And also I have a question from Pass Blue. Will a transcript of this briefing be made available? Dulcie, you mean this briefing we had right now? I'm not sure. Yeah, of course, we will post it on the PGA website under media and the spokesperson's notes. Yes, okay. I don't see any other questions. Thank you so much and stay safe. And please reach out to me via emails if you have any questions. I would always welcome that. Thank you and have a nice weekend. Take care.
Thank you, Ramadan Kareem, and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you, Reem.
Ramadan Kareem.
Bye.
Thank you.